Welcome to the Future Series podcast. The Future Series podcast is a new podcast series powered by Benoy, the global family of design specialists committed to delivering world-class solutions for the built environment. The series will bring thought leadership on all things related to design. It will bring ideas around architecture, real estate, retail, hospitality, and all manner of current topics within the built environment realm. My name is Dan Innes, and I'm going to be your host. Today, we are joined by Zaynib Khan, Senior Associate Director at Benoy, and Sharòn Cohen, who's the Store Planning Director at Fendi Casa, to discuss the state of luxury. The title of our episode is Hospitality, a Luxury Revolution, and we're going to challenge our speakers today to answer questions such as, what is luxury? And how is the term luxury changing, especially in the hotel, homes and hospitality industry? We're going to also explore the interlinking idea of luxury and wellness in the hospitality sector, and whether the inclusivity of these terms should be the focus for architectural design. So, let's get started. And just one thing before we do jump in and meet our speakers today, let's just set the scene a little bit with some luxury and hospitality facts and figures. The size of the global luxury hotel market was a staggering $94 billion in 2020. The global impact of COVID has obviously had an unprecedented and staggering impact, though. So, with luxury hotels witnessing a negative demand across all regions right through the pandemic. But, despite this decline of minus 61% in the market in 2020, the market's projected to grow, and it's going to grow from about 120 billion US dollars in 2021 to 238 billion by 2028. So all of that means that the luxury hospitality sector is set to bounce back very strongly. And we think that design, architecture, and the way we think about, especially for today's podcast, luxury hospitality is going to really, really be at the center of the debate. So where better to start than a quick discussion and a very brief introduction from each of our speakers. So firstly, Zaynib, welcome.
Thank you.
Zaynib, tell us a little bit about your role at Benoy, and especially to do with the topic that we have on our tables in front of us today.
Well, I lead our hospitality focus at Benoy, and a lot of the work we do covers a range of market classes in luxury, premium luxury, working with premium luxury brands all the way through to mid-scale brands and also mass market brands as well. And with that topic of luxury, we're constantly thinking about what is luxury, how it's redefining itself, what the guest narratives are related to that luxury experience, and how that is going to take shape through our design projects going forward.
And do you find that luxury is in its ascendancy still? Do you really strongly believe that? Or do you feel that luxury is now going to become more for the masses? What's your feeling about that?
I think previously luxury was very much associated with or limited to this kind of elitism or exclusivity, and recently what we're seeing is that luxury is all about authenticity and personalization, and there's a real focus on incredible, impeccable service. And I think that's very much going to be what steers the future of luxury. It's redefining some of these concepts and really putting the guest at the centre of that.
Mm. And you're obviously at the heart of the design process that helps to deliver that. And already you're seeing that in your role at Benoy?
Absolutely. I mean, we focus on the guest. It's it's the first thing we think about and the last thing we think about, and what is that guest experience, and where can those moments of luxury come into that design. And whether it's even, we do a lot of our work starts at the kind of master planning scale. We look at the best placement of the hotels on that site. And then as we develop into the design, it's really thinking about that story. Storytelling is a huge part of the luxury experience that we play on, and where are those moments of luxury within that story and that journey.
And where are you pulling that inspiration from? Where are you seeing the visual cues or the design cues for architecture? Where are they coming? Where have you found those yourself?
A lot of that, I think, comes from the context. It comes from the place. And if we want to really focus on an authentic experience, a unique experience, we take that inspiration from the surrounding context. We're working on a project in Giza in Egypt with Accor, and that's a wonderful site that has views towards the pyramids. And we are, the spaces, the kind of public spaces and where they're arranged in the hotel, the kind of beauty of that is where we sort of focus our views, and that where we can provide a sense of heritage and culture within those spaces that are authentic.
So it's a truly global view. And and how are you addressing the different needs of guests around the world with some of your experiences or some of the examples that you can think of?
Well, taking it to sort of a broader picture of what a guest should have, and something we think about a lot is this idea that everybody has the right to luxury, and everybody has the right to feel that, and that emotional connection is so important. I feel that's what luxury really is. It's about what those spaces can do. What is the experience you're going to have that's going to make you feel that you're having a luxury experience? And so that emotional connection can be driven through it can be driven through artwork, it can be driven through the kind of craftsmanship and the detailing within spaces.
And just thinking what people listening will think of as luxury is perhaps luxury goods. And just thinking around, I want to bring in at this point Sharòn to think about the role of luxury goods and that evolving image that we all have about luxury and its impact that clearly we're discussing today with hospitality. But with Sharon's background prior to Fendi Casa, working with Prada, and understanding the design process for these big global fashion houses, and how that luxurious feeling, that emotion that Zaynab was just discussing there, that emotion, that feeling and connection. Tell us a little bit about the emotional connection of luxury in your view, Sharòn.
For me, luxury is first of all selling a dream. And I think that one of the demonstrations for this fact that something changed a lot in luxury in the past years is that if before, even 80s, luxury was the temples of luxury. It was for restricted people, a group of people. Things changed, but I think that one of the reasons that changed is a social media. And today there is a direct connection between luxury and social media. The idea of selling a dream, the idea of be there, the idea to show that. So also in design, I think many things change, and I can tell you that it's also true for the stores, Fendi or any other store, is Instagrammability of the space. And it is almost unavoidable today. Basically, a place exists today, unless it is the old temple, you can think about the Ritz Hotel or so on, will exist thanks to Instagram. It's true for restaurants, it's true for hospitality, and it's even true for the big brands. They will change, the curve of the sales will change a lot by influencer, not anymore by model, by show, but an influencer today will make much more change than the old ways in which we communicated luxury, whatever it is, this luxury.
And do you think these influencers are influencing design as well, and materials and architecture?
I think it's a bit more organic than to say like a surprise in a way that they're changing it suddenly in a day. It is more of some form of evolution in a way, because there is a need for the brands and there is a need for the developers and the hotels to satisfy this need. They will try to find the new thing, the new image, the new gimmick, the new something that will make them stand out and be directly recognizable. I can tell you from my own experience that I myself was pure victim exactly of that. Last year, I got married and I went to a vacation in Puglia. And honestly, I didn't even remember it was there. But came to my mind a restaurant that is in Puglia, Grotta Palazzese, that everybody knows thanks to this image of this amazing restaurant in the middle of that is basically digged inside the rock. And it came to my mind, and immediately tried to fix a booking over there, which I succeed to have. A little bit convincing them, look, it's a honeymoon, I didn't know, and so on. And just because I knew it through Instagram, and you think I didn't take a selfie? Of course I did.
I think influencers are driving a lot of the conversation, particularly, and clearly, trends are being driven by a lot of these influencers in terms of their choices, in terms of their styles, and clearly there's lots of different kinds of people out there. But Zaynib, are you kind of seeing that people are, you're almost anticipating the needs of these luxury travelers or luxury guests, and have you referred back to Instagram for inspiration for any of these things?
It's so interesting now that we are being asked by our clients sometimes to think about these Instagrammable moments, and that is something that's really only appeared in the past few years. But if we kind of challenge what they're trying to ask for with the idea of producing an Instagrammable experience, is actually you're creating a unique experience that nobody has. And I think that is really where you start to play and think, what can you provide that is going to have longevity? Because these Instagrammable moments are going to change very, very quickly. And what's going to actually have integrity? What experience is going to have integrity? And I think that's in design. If you really focus on, I mentioned before about the context, is what can you take from that place that's unique to that place? It's the food, it's the kind of artistry in the food, the culture, the heritage, and all of that will have integrity to it. And I think that's important, because there is this wow factor that everybody wants, and they want to get to their holiday in their place. It feels extravagant. But then, for that to actually, but there's so much of that around now, but I think to create a space that can hold that feeling in, 10, 15, 20 years is really important. We think about that in terms of design a lot.
I think that it's true, but I also think that there is another aspect, is if we talk about Instagram, if we talk about luxury, which, by the way, in my opinion, is more affordable today, and there is a reason for that, you're also saying something about yourself by being in a certain hotel, in a certain environment, certain location. For example, and this is an assumption, I have no numbers what I'm saying, but it will be more possible that, for example, a classic hotel like Risk in Moscow or like any other hotel, Four Seasons, will be some kind of a dream come true for certain people of certain age, mostly. But most people will decide to go to Ezo in Chile, for example, to show that not only the luxury, but look how different is my vacation. Look how courageous I am. A lot of people are going to go to, for example, from Tel Aviv, they're going to go to the Genesis Hotel in the middle of the desert, which is literally in the middle of the desert, built from the same sand of the desert. And they will show how ecological they are and how environmental friendly they are. And it will be a decision to say who you are. Also, the hotel themselves, hotel, bag, restaurant, and so on.
And I guess those photographs appear all over the social media, just to prove the point. And I fully agree with you that the example you gave there, another one, there are hotels up in Alula in northern Saudi Arabia, equally just absolutely stunning locations, very incredibly remote, as there also are many remote hotels in Thailand. It's almost as if travel the distance to get to these hotels is part of the badge of honor. But I mean, talking about travel and getting long distances to places, this is clearly something which people are also challenging themselves on, and that's their carbon footprints, their sustainability credentials, and their reputation clearly rests upon that. And clearly that's not stopping many travelers. But I mean, what is your feeling about the rise of sustainability and ESG credentials within the development of these hotels, especially not just the consumer angle, but the actual construction and design and materials that are being used?
I think guests are more conscious than ever about their carbon footprint and their impacts when they travel. And I think, they're questioning when they go away, what are they going away for? What are they seeking, for their experience? Are they going away to relax? Are they going away? Are they putting more of a thought into that? And then the value of that is to create an environment where their experience is actually giving back, and that's what we're seeing a lot of, giving back experiences. And the other thing that's sort of come out of the pandemic is there are fewer stays, but those stays are over a longer period. And that changes then, in terms of design, thinking about, okay, if somebody was going to stay here for a month, they might only have one holiday that year. And then what is the environment around them like? Can this be their home away from home? Does that actually feel like a home away from home? Can they work there? Can they actually, have everything in that as part of their, their offering of their experience?
And do you think the whole industry is lifting itself up, to help to meet those kinds of targets? I mean, I noticed that the 5-Star Alliance group, the travel agency, the online travel agency, they've listed several luxury eco-friendly hotels across the world, including places like the Banyan Tree Bintan in Indonesia, the Four Seasons in Vancouver, the Hyatt Olive 8 in the US, the Shangri-La Hotel in Bangkok. These hotels are listed on a number of factors now, and I think lots of different groups are beginning to grade hotels in terms of what they're giving back, the footprint that you leave, and things like major hotels. The Marriott Group, for example, removed single-use plastic bottles from bath gels and shampoos and conditioners right across their properties globally, and that's reduced their plastic usage by 30%, and that's clearly something they're very, very proud of. And do you see people trying to give themselves targets? Do you see people trying to reach certain benchmarks, or are there enough benchmarks?
I definitely do. I think it's a very strange era that we are right now, because we have from one side what we call ecosystem, and we have to be responsible. We have an image of green, and the more you're green, you more pass to the intellectual side of, and more smart and so on. But it's also the era of extravagant, and it's also the era of people wanting to show money, and that's something that I don't think we had that much before, because very often in the past, people even with money wouldn't even want to show it very, very much. In many countries, they would have avoided, Scandinavian countries or many other countries in Europe especially, they wouldn't avoid to have a car that it's too much. And today it's not like that. We are not ashamed anymore in showing money. So I think it's kind of we have these two sides. And for example, if you go to Miami, right now there is under construction a development from Aston Martin, which is absolutely has, to say it's sustainable, yeah, true, it's going to be certified LEED. But the impact, I think it's quite obvious what it is. So to say that we're going towards sustainability, I think we kind of have to, for two reasons. One is obviously resources we're conscious to that, and image. But also I think maybe it's the positive side of the cost that actually not being sustainable, what it can be, because luxury, as we said, I think it is becoming more affordable. It has to open itself. It won't resist on only of a small group. So in order to do that, they also have to calculate really well the margins. So you have to take in consideration the cost of fuel. You have to take in consideration the cost of shipment. You have to take in consideration the cost of labor and so on. So all these things impact also positively on the choices that many luxury brands, hotels, development are doing.
And you mentioned the sort of the opulence of luxury in hospitality, but what kind of materials are you looking to introduce into some of these destinations and hotels? Has that changed over the last 5 or 10 years?
I think the aesthetic has changed massively. I think previously we used to see a lot of kind of loud signals of luxury, very, very obvious types of a look and a feel that you would associate with luxury, and we very much moved away from that by thinking about more of a focus on sustainability and a more of an understanding of the materials that we're using. We've just generated a palette which is much more refined, a palette which is much more of a kind of earthy, natural materials look and feel. And there's a focus on the beauty of detailing and craftsmanship, and longevity, because if you're going to put really good quality, robust materials, you're thinking about, okay, in a hotel sort of time scale that you would typically look to kind of refurbish a hotel every 11 years for the soft finishing. But actually, if you readdress that and think, well, I'm going to put in a timeless design that's based around a refined palette of materials that could last much longer, then I think that's the way we're trying to think about it, and that's what we're seeing already on at large scale across a number of different brands are adopting that. The other thing I think which is really important to think about materials is the idea of the circular economy. How can some of the materials that we're specifying, how can they be reused again, and how can they be reused without going through an industrial process heavily? So these are the types of things we're looking at, and we're seeing come through.
And you mentioned the time scale of working with some of these hotel groups, and that's for things like you mentioned refurbishment. But so in terms of introducing a new hotel and actually thinking about a new location, how long would that time scale, how early on would you be involved?
From the start of the design process, or from the specifying of the material? Sorry.
From the very first call to say, we'd like you to be involved in terms of the selection of the materials, the look and the feel of the location, perhaps helping that hotel operator to adapt their brand to that location. I'm just thinking of ideas of, how early on in the whole process can you start thinking about materiality and experience?
I think it's great that operators have their brand guidelines and their brand standards, and what we've seen is a shift away from actually being given a detailed set of specification requirements from the operators, and more of their kind of principles and guiding vision, and that gives a lot more freedom to the architects and the designers. So what we're doing quite early on is, we within the hotel spaces, we've got the guest rooms and we've got the public spaces, and we design the guest room spaces in mind that they may change and the soft finishes may change and need to be replaced much sooner than some of the hard finishes in the public spaces. So we sort of know that early on, and I think that we very much shape the design process. We're not led by others in that. There's a real great communication and collaboration with our clients when we talk about why we're putting certain materials into our hotels, healthy materials, materials that are going to give a connection to touch, sound, a sensory experience. And so that starts to come in very early on, and it very much is about the what you want to feel in that space, the lightness of it, the darkness, the cozy, the atmosphere you're trying to create, and it happens quite early on.
And these changes, I'm just thinking about what's driving these changes, and we mentioned about obviously consumer demand, and consumer style, individual styles. It's just thinking about other things that are driving the choices of design. Sharòn, you've just recently opened a new Fendi Casa in Milan. The design choices for that destination what processes do you go through in terms of making sure that something meets the expectations of these highly demanding guests?
I think that one of the positive side about luxury is, you mentioned also longevity, which is true. On the contrary, what is like fast fashion and so on, that is the idea that when you buy a certain bag, when you buy a certain, when you buy a car, it's for lasting longer. And the beautiful part about luxury that they have to be pioneer. We have to be pioneer. We have to be innovative. We have to set a new trend. You can't bring something old. And that is true for any sector of luxury. And therefore, it dragged behind it either the one that aimed to, let's say, cannibalize part of luxury, or to live a little bit from the stardust that it might live, or older temples of luxury that now have to catch up. For example, and then I will answer also the question specifically what you asked me. But for example, just a little bit while you were talking about thinking about it, is while we used to, one of the things that was identified with luxury was the fact that, and I have my own personal experience from that, and I went to Moscow in 2019, and for breakfast in December, outside it was -20, we had ananas and watermelon. And today it would be so anachronistic. It's something that you can't do because it's just behind times. And I'm sure that if they're still doing it, I didn't visit them since then, but if they're still doing it, it will change. They have to catch up with time. Also because the Ritz Hotel will have to respect the same standard that they will have in the States, in California, or in Europe, and so on. So they're going to keep the same. So it will happen that they will follow the new trends. And so when it comes to the store of Fendi Milano, for your question, is that obviously when you sell luxury, you want to sell experience that goes beyond the product itself in terms of service, the place that you enter in, and it is an entire experience. It has to be an experience. It's not enough what you take home. It's also important what the experience itself of buying what you're going to take home. And you also want to be recognizable. So there is, even though many brands try to find as much as possible to a little bit to personalize the place relatively to where they are. If it's by the sea, if it's Miami, or if it's Shanghai, two different places. But still, it has to be recognizable. Specifically for Fendi Casa, obviously wanted to be recognized with Fendi. So therefore, the design is very similar. So when you enter, you need to know where you are. When you take a selfie, you need to know where you are. And that was very important, obviously, in the design also of Fendi in Milano. So luxury is an experience that goes beyond the product itself.
Mm-hmm. I can see it's incredibly challenging to create a hospitality space that can endure that timeless kind of challenge from clients. If that 11-year cycle that you mentioned there, Zaynib, in terms of the fixtures, the fittings, the style, are there other ways now that hospitality venues and hotels that are they able to change and update their feeling more regularly than 11 years now with other initiatives perhaps?
I think the everyday moments that you bring into the hotel are the bits that change, and there's some really magical hotels out there that focus on seasonal qualities, whether it's seasonal food on their menus or whether it's the kind of flowers that are displayed in the lobby, and that kind of ever-changing sort of light touches. It could be the artwork. Looking at in a luxury context, you might have a unique art, unique art journey that's created just for that hotel, and that could be something that's changed much more regularly or moved around to other hotels. And I think it's the kind of soft finishes, having flexible seating arrangements. Those are the elements that are probably can adapt to whatever's that space needs to be used for. And it's almost that you want to create the kind of hard shell as something that will have longevity, and the internal of that space can change. And something that I think is very important is about how we call it multi-use spaces, and I think the hotel lobby is a great example of a space that is changing all the time. You know, the idea that a lobby can change from, you know, being a place where you can work during the day and you know, get a drink, get a coffee, and at night time, just by lighting, the atmosphere can be changed so that you could have a very intimate venue, you could have you know, a poetry evening, you could have a music venue in that space as well. And so by just the thinking about lighting, thinking about the kind of seating arrangements and the flexibility of that, then that's what's going to give the longevity.
Because I think we're seeing a lot of impact on other adjacent uses as well, like private members clubs, office spaces, even using the hotel lobby theory, and you know, applying that to help improve the user experience in those kind of locations. But I'm thinking as well about the individual nature of luxury and one's own particular style. And Sharòn, you mentioned that luxury was perhaps becoming more accessible, and I think also, Zaynib, you mentioned that in terms of the style, in terms of hotels and the types of I don't know, price point or location. You know, is accessibility in retail something that you're witnessing and you think is high up the agenda within the world of hospitality?
From retail and fashion, absolutely yes. Just think about the collaboration that they're doing. So right now in fashion, I think that one of the biggest thing is actually pop-ups. They're used more and more, and actually a lot of companies invest in pop-up more than they actually invest in renovating stores, because it is about being seen, about being unique, about being to give the new, to once again boost the brand in social media, to boost the brand in its interests. It's not enough anymore to have just a store. And I think that hospitality probably will have to adapt to that, because in a world where there is so much offer, you want to go to the hotel, which is the hot hotel and so on. Think of Ned here in London, for example. No, you want to be seen there. Is it the best hotel? I'm not going to comment that, but you want to be seen there. So I believe that the same attitude will going to happen also in the hospitality. I can tell you one more thing, by the way. Sorry. For example, there are so many developers that are approaching brands in order to brand their skyscraper, their building as brand, and again, it's to create interest. It's great to be certified as luxury, basically. And also we see that there is the same phenomenon in hospitality, Bulgari Hotel, Fendi Hotel, and so on.
And Zaynib, do you think luxury is almost too exclusive? Can it be given to the masses? Or how would you define this growth in luxury and its ability to reach more people around the world?
Well, it's definitely more of a challenge to you know, put in luxury within the mass market. It is much more of a challenge. If you are, you know, in the kind of luxury premium hotel brand or market class, then, you know, there are so many things that you see in the physical that are associated with luxury, and they just cannot be rolled out with ease into the mass market. And I could just sort of expand on, let's say, the wellness sides of things. You know, everyone has the right to luxury. That's what we feel as a principle. And how, you know, the majority of the world, I would say, it's not accessible for them to reach to the kind of offers that are, you know, the type of experience that we get from luxury and premium branded hotels. However, if we look at what's being offered in terms of wellness, and that kind of thought about mindfulness and looking after your, you know, promoting a healthy lifestyle and well-being, well, actually, what can we do with those things that we can put within, let's say, for the guest room, for example? just ensuring that there's space to roll out your yoga mat and have a bit of meditation and a bit of reflection in your room, that can be done quite easily. It's much more than just putting a gym in a hotel. I think we need to really focus on one-to-one relationships, because that connection and that human connection and the service is something that I think if we focus on, that is really which is going to help the kind of feeling of luxury.
And does that also go through and further into design and material choice, these kind of elements too?
Well, yes, I think in terms of material selection, there are, price points that are associated with, natural materials. We can look at timbers and natural stones, and they, as an average price per square meter, will be much more than something that is, a man-made material, for instance. But I think the pay, the payoff is worth it. There's a lot more that goes into just the price point of that material. It's, its carbon footprint and things like that. And I would say across the board, there is, a really good set of principles and specifications, that stop you from, specifying. As designers, we would only specify healthy materials, ones which have, they're either net zero to begin with. Within hotels.
The luxury sector over many, many decades, just to be slightly provocative for a second, it has a history of using some, rarer materials, and perhaps, some are incredibly expensive, as you've mentioned, Zaynib, but, especially when it comes to fashion, Sharòn, are there materials now that would never be seen again now and would be used only decades ago, and are we now looking at a much more sustainable future?
Yes, luckily we are. Undoubtedly, if you look at even in the early 20th century, luxury had a very, very precise idea. It would be exotic. It would be exotic animals. It would be exotic materials. It would best much more in that would have been luxury back then. So it wouldn't be even enough to be a fur, but it has to be the fur of a tiger that comes from India, and that did change. It changed, one, because it has to, because biodiversity just is disappearing, so it has to change. There is much more conscious. There is much more. Let's say, an eye looking at it, you just can't do certain things. You will be immediately. Once again, I'm sorry that I'm quoting that much social media, but it is like that. You don't want to have this bad publicity of showing the animal torture, or that you don't want to see that your brand has the cages of certain animals and so on.
Is this a Generation Z? Millennial thing?
Absolutely. And now they do also have the power to buy, to consume. So it's not anymore, you can't, one of the things that changed in luxury is that you have a lot of the Z generation, we said 2030s, that actually has the power to consume. And they are part of a world in which everything is important. I mean, in terms of political correctness, in terms of social awareness, and so you just can't risk to lose them, and you can't risk the bad publicity. So so one company right now competing with the other. So LVMH is starting to move from more and more brand defer. Kering completely removed that. Prada just did it.
I was reading the other day, Gucci's reinforcing its luxury credentials in its way by shifting away from a fashion-driven reinvention to a kind of a new era of sustainable elevation, which could be optics, but I genuinely see so much change towards a more sustainable future. Zaynib, would you agree?
Well, I think what's really interesting when you touch about how, that younger generation are more socially conscious, I think what's really important is that this kind of idea that it's a shared connectedness as well that they want to have. And, they are, the kind of reviews are so important. And from a hotel's perspective, everything is on the reviews. You can't afford to have a bad review. And because one bad review can cost you, a lot of rooms that are not going to get
years
used,
to try to make up for that.
Absolutely, and I think with that, knowing that how important those reviews are, and knowing how quickly people are posting on social media about their experience, I think is we have very little room for error, and having that. To go sort of a bit further on the shared connectedness part is you want to feel part of a community with your hotel experiences. And I think we see a lot of platforms where the guest is connecting to other people that are staying there, to, locals in the area, looking for those little insights of information that they may not have previously got. And I think that's quite important in what they're looking for, really, what they feel connected to and what kind of experience they want to have.
I think it's fundamental when you said about also storytelling. Storytelling also goes from the part of the client, not only of the brand or of the hotel. I refer for the fact, for example, that one of the things that people will highlight always when you read about a review about, on TripAdvisor, about some little story that it was amazing the way I was treated by the owner, by that waiter, by that person, and that is fundamental also for I think any part of any service basically to give right now. In terms of materials, that by the way we talked before, I'm thinking about so many successful hotels today. I don't know if you heard about, for example, in Abruzzo in Italy. There is quite an amazing experiment that I think that hotel was built sometimes in the early 2000s. It was one of the first albergo diffuso, which is a spread hotel. Basically, they took over part of a medieval village, and basically the hotel is all over the village, and they rebuilt it from the same stone, from the same technique, not technology, but technique of the way it was built in the medieval. It's all made of stone, wood, local materials, and that hotel is extremely successful. Once again, very visible in social media, any platform, and it has a story. And that for sure is kind of the future. Obviously, they're not about to die, the big hotels on the Miami Beach and things like that. Obviously, they will continue to exist, also because they give some kind of unique experience that some people... Hotels, I think even more than fashion, is so much about being part of a tribe in a way. Where are you from? Who are you? What is your social income? When did you make your money? Because there is a huge difference between old money, new money that come from the new economy, money that come from natural resources. It's completely different mind of people, and people do have the tendency to want to be with their similar. And so obviously there is a space for everything, but I do think that just like everybody want to see fit, want to look fit, everybody want to show that they're eating correctly. You want to be in an environment in which you're going to use more and more natural material. Everybody's way more conscious about everything, asbestos, about this material and that. So it works together. The exposure that we have in social media, the fact that the world is going a certain direction, we're talking more and more about environmental, it does shows in every choice that for brands, hotels, everywhere.
That's very much front and center, I think, across the built environment, is to understand exactly how we're managing the pressures on our sustainability credentials and the impact that we're having on the environment. And Zaynib, what do you think the direction is for the luxury hospitality industry for the next, in the next 10 or 15 years? Do you recognise it today, or do you think there are changes that are still coming through the sector that will have a big impact in the next few years?
I think what will define a luxury experience will always be what the guest wants, and I think the guest defines that. And as we see shifts in the world, and we're going through, it's interesting, the cost of living crisis. It's, we're talking about luxury, and there's a cost of living crisis. So you're constantly challenging what would a guest want and what will define luxury to them. For me personally, I feel that something that gives you that emotional connection is what gives you the feeling of luxury, because you can have all the mod cons, you can have all the little extras in your room, but that isn't what's going to define the luxury experience. But if you focus on a one-to-one service, if you focus on like one-to-one relationship, if you focus on impeccable service and an authentic experience, and that can be the kind of scent that you're greeted with when you arrive at the hotel lobby, it can be that warm welcome for the person at the check-in desk. It can, there's this kind of magic that, you might need something, you don't even realize that you've needed it, and it's there for you. Those are the touches that I think will always instill that level of luxury.
Anything personal, for your personal requests for the next 15 years? Well,
I read somewhere that mine is coffee, if I've got the coffee that I want in the room. And it's funny, actually, the hotel industry collects so much data about their guests that they probably know what my favourite coffee is and how I want it. And if that was ready in the room for me when I arrive, and, I love a super warm room, like all of those things, I feel like if someone knows how you want it in your everyday life, and without you having to say that, then it would be great that that's already done for you. And we're seeing that happen already. But I did read somewhere, which was very interesting, that luxury is, it's what you want, how you want it, before you even knew that you wanted it. It was along the line, something like that. And I thought that's exactly it. If someone could give me something that I need or that I want before I've even realised that I wanted it myself, and it's exactly what I wanted, then that's luxury.
I think that's a perfect summary there, the definition of luxury and anticipating a guest's needs. So thank you so much, both of you. Thank you, Zaynib.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sharòn.
Thank you.
This has been the first episode of the Future Series podcast. I really hope that you've enjoyed the discussion today. I hope you'll log in to other editions in the future. This podcast is going to be available wherever you get your podcasts, and we do hope you log in to listen to us again soon.